Well, we're at Friedrichshafen for our second day. We're actually on the RSGB stand. I'm here with John Gould, G3WKL. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Martin.
John. And I'm with Graham Coomber. Sorry, let's get your name right. Oh, I'm terrible. You only have to ask the other presenters. I get all the time. Nice to meet the pair of you. You enjoying the show so far?
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah.
And what you mentioned to me? What time did we get here? What time did you get here?
Well, about 2 hours later than I should have done. I spent a very happy hour or so at Luton Airport.
Luton Airport. Well, I think we were at Dover Ferry Port, so we drove.
Yeah, no, it's always an interesting challenge coming over here.
It is, but it's great fun. We enjoyed our road trip down.
Yeah.
Looking at your stand, you've got a really nice stand. Lots of advertising of the RSGB, which looks good.
Yeah.
Lots of books for sale, which are always good.
Yeah.
And what else is going on at the show today?
Well, typically my sort of role here is obviously to meet members and other people, but we do a lot of networking, sort of informally, but amongst other member societies, the IRU. We had a session yesterday afternoon which was very interesting, where we talked about how to coordinate more activity and effort between member societies, which is like the RSGB in other countries, talking to their regulator, because things like defence of spectrum is very, very important, and everybody thinks that somebody else is doing it, whereas actually, like us, you need to talk to the regulator. Not many countries do this. Some of them find it quite difficult, so we're trying to encourage people to engage more with the regulator on things like EMC matters, sort of switch mode power supplies, PV installations, wind farms and things like that. And it's really trying to get a collective effort going, and that's really what has been the nub of a lot of international work over many years, and that's sort of one of the opportunities of coming here. So that's where I was when you wanted to talk to me about 5 minutes ago, literally walking around talking to various people, and it's that networking which is part and parcel of coming here.
Very, very important, and I'm sorry we've dragged you away.
No, that's all right.
But
I need a rest.
Hey, blame me, ICQ.
Yeah, I'll blame you then.
Graham, you mentioned we were talking a few minutes ago about the youth.
Indeed.
You're very passionate about that, the same as we are on the podcast, and I'm sure John is. Tell us a bit about what they're up to.
Yes, well, just a little bit of history. For some time now, members have pointed out quite rightly that we haven't perhaps focused on youth as much as we should. They're very much for the future. So last November we formed for the first time a youth committee, an experiment, but we've got, I'm not sure how many of them there are, but a very enthusiastic band of young members who are very keen, obviously, to promote the hobby and bring more people in. So that's been working really well. They've kept us on our toes, brought a whole new perspective to how we should do things, and their latest project, they're going to the Brecon Beacons, I think, in a couple of weeks' time for a young person's de-expedition. A whole week of operating SOTA, building stuff, and learning a lot and having fun, and promoting amateur radio, and particularly the youth aspect of it. So that's something we're very excited about. It seems to be going very well, and something we want to make sure we develop in future years.
Yeah. I mean, I understand we've done fairly well as a club, my local club, and got a lot of youth in there. And I think, dare I say it, because we're all not 25, let's be honest, guys.
Yeah, I'm a bit north of 25.
Yeah, a bit north of 25, yeah. But, years ago it used to be CW contest, and that was it. And if you didn't do CW in contest, you weren't a real amateur. And if you'll say 16, 17, 20, the guys have a different perspective of what they want to do in a hobby. And it's quite nice to suddenly see them doing things that you wouldn't necessarily expect it, but it's still developing our hobby.
Sure.
I remember catching some of our youngsters, 16-year-olds, and they had a TS2000 out, Kenwood TS2000, and they were decoding slow scan TV onto their mobile phone. They put a mobile phone by the speaker, and I wouldn't have thought of doing that. But it's nice to have excitement in the hobby, and I think it's all about keeping the excitement. So the youth is good, and
Well, I think it's important to really think what amateur radio is about. And in fact, I was talking to, I was over at Dayton a few weeks ago, again doing a sort of similar thing here, but they're able to network obviously with a whole load of Americans and things like that. And one of the perspectives they're finding is actually we need to call radio wireless. It seems like we're going back to the 1920s, but actually the youngsters, the lingua franca is wireless. They actually understand more what wireless is rather than radio.
Yeah.
And that brings in all the sort of digital connection of connecting things together. And it may not be conventional sort of 599 Martin, you're loud and clear. It may be different sorts of wireless interest. I've just been, I got as far as the Maker Fair. I was very interested to see what's really switching the kids on.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 3D printing, there's a lot of that. And there was a very interesting, looked like a fuel cell, my German isn't up to, but there was certainly hydrogen and various other gases involved, so I guess it was a fuel cell, but driving something. But the kids, it was quite interesting looking at the kids. They're on their phones, they're doing things, and they're sort of playing games, and they like making things. And I think it's good. The crossover with amateur radio is quite difficult, but I think if you think more in terms of non-professional involvement in wireless technology and making things, that may be closer.
I think that it's getting the youth in. It's using amateur radio as the enabler. One youngster I can specifically comes to mind. One youngster that comes to mind was he went to see a friend of his who was an amateur, same age, and he went there to take the mickey because he didn't know anything about amateur radio. And he left the guy's house absolutely sold and went and did his licenses. And I think it's promotion of our hobby and how we can get it into the youth. If they don't know about it...
Well, we've done quite a lot on that recently. I happen to be giving support to a rally, and we were chatting around. It was basically a youth fest in Newbury, so there was opportunity of a lot of teenagers there and parents with maybe younger kids, not specifically there for hobbies, but there was a whole load of sort of hobby and craft things, and the Newbury Club put on a really good display. We got into discussion about that, and they said, well, how can we get more sort of understanding of what works? And we set up a working group. It was their initiative, very much, and we've recently taken their report at board. And I don't think the board actually took any time trying to sort out what to select and what to reject. We just took the package and say, that's good. What we now need to do is implement that. And that really is, how do we best approach the public at rallies? A lot of clubs do extremely well, but what is the best practice and how can we help support that?
Yeah, well, I know that I believe it was yourself who spent time with Michael G0POT.
That was the gentleman involved, yes.
Well, we had a conference with him, and we also put it on the podcast, and I wasn't trying to gazump your findings on this, but I quite like Michael, and everything he had to say made sense. And it is about developing our hobby. We're all passionate about it. We need to get out there and bang the drum as many times as we can.
Indeed, yes.
And I think there's an issue of what can we do to support people in clubs. You mentioned clubs, and Michael, and you mentioned Michael, we're working very closely with Michael now and his group to actually develop some materials and some support resources, if you like, for clubs to help them make sure, to give them more confidence perhaps and promoting in the right way to bring people in, because we're very passionate about youth. We're under no illusions of our limitations. Actually, the real success will lie with the everyday clubs being able to bring youth into the hobby. And as you say, unfortunately, none of us are getting any younger, and the average age of clubs follows that trend, and we need to find a way of making local clubs attractive, perhaps, to young members. And that's the future.
Yeah, well, if we don't bring the youth in another 20 years, guys, we're going to be talking to ourselves, be calling sick, you're going to be nobody there.
Youth is a priority. I've been on the board before, and in my previous time it was again a priority, but we didn't have the success that we've had recently in the last year or so, getting a youth committee on board. And you said you weren't quite sure how many there were. Actually, it was as many people, I think, as put themselves forward and prepared to give time and effort. So we haven't limited it, but they are a good active group. But I think coming back, I listened to a talk a while ago by an amateur, and it was all about getting out there and doing something. You know, we touched briefly, in 2013, one of the real success factors out of the centenary year, and we had a lot of good time and a lot of good fun, was the centenary station. You know, it got people out doing things that probably hadn't done similar things before. And thinking back to my own youth when I got involved, going out camping, eating half-cooked sausages, putting up with the horizontal rain, maybe having some fun on a band which perhaps hadn't put up before. So I think the guys going to Pennyvan, I wish them well. I hope they don't get bad weather. But actually, it'll be whatever they achieve, it'll be a memorable thing, and it will tie them into the hobby even closer. That's my gut feeling.
I agree with you 100%, and I think that in the past, and not us guys, because I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but in the past, some amateurs have been a little bit dismissive. It's like the first time you work the States, you get a big wow factor, or you work Australia, but if you did it 30, 40 years ago, and a youngster comes in, I've just worked Australia, and you go, read it, got the t-shirt, I've done that umpteen times. I'm sure when they did it the first time, they had the wow factor, and we need to show the wow factor to them.
And doing it out of an aerial that you've strung together or made, or done some component part, or maybe you've put a kit together and you've got a very simple sort of SDR type transceiver or something like that. It gives a real wow factor.
Sure.
It still does to me.
Every time.
I used to have a regular contact with the VK3. My wife always said, well, why don't you just phone him? Well, I've sent him a text to say I'm going to be half an hour late. But it was still the fun of actually having the contact and whether the propagation would allow it. We've had a coronal mass ejection in the last few days, and 6 meters is absolutely humming apparently. And there's a load of hams I've talked to here. They want to get home and get back on 6 meters.
well, one of our group was talking about going to Switzerland today to do SOTA activation because he knew the 6 meters was open. I think we might be one down today.
There'll be a whole crowd of hams in Liechtenstein, I expect.
But that is the beauty of our hobby. I describe it as electronic fishing, effectively. It's like you go fishing, you throw your rod out, and sometimes you catch a lot, sometimes you catch nothing. And amateur radio is like that, but it's the joy of the chase, isn't it?
Well, part of that I think which ties some youngsters in, and it's perhaps an issue for clubs. They need to give them space. One of the things I think that ties a certain type of member in. I look at it sort of simply. I think there's sort of maybe two broad categories of people. Some people like sort of pulling things apart and being creative and making something new, and that moves into sort of system engineering of buying building blocks and stitching things together with computers or whatever. The other extreme, and it's a very simplification. The other extreme is I think people who really enjoy communicating and largely contesting competition. Some people are very much at one end or the other. A lot of people cover both. Now, there will be some people coming into the hobby, and it's not just exclusively youngsters. But they may not they may not sort of get a really good grip for the hobby on the technical or the system engineering side. But give them a chance to start working a special station like our G100 RSGB or GW100 RSGB. One or two people there got into electronic logging and found it all so much easier and fun, and they literally went home and started being more active. Others get involved in a contest, and that bites them, and they're into contesting. And it may be that others, start with a simple kit and start building something, get excited. We had a whole bunch of kids, didn't we, to the centenary day at Bletchley Park, where they were building the RSGB 80 meter PSK receiver, and they did the Raspberry Pi bit. We couldn't stop them. The people that we had the marquee from actually started taking it down while the kids were in there. We couldn't get the kids to stop. There's several things that are really important touchstones in the hobby, and it's wrong. We need to see all of those touchstones, and we need to support them.
I agree with you 100%. But as I say, I think we're doing well. Just moving on just slightly, anything specific, any announcements you want to make before we wind up?
Oh, I'm brain dead. I think it's a bit too early in the morning. I haven't had enough coffee to switch me on.
Hey John, these guys have been loading me with coffee because I get hypo. But no, thanks very, very much for your time. And you, Graham.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
Listen, guys, don't be shy. Come and talk to us.
Yeah.
We've always said this to the RSGB. Come and talk to us. If you've got announcements, we were there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your time, guys. Cheers.
Bye.